And we're back for game number 2 of this. Actually, no, see, that's called habit. That's called me trying to say what I usually say in the D2L. This is game number 2 of our 5-game series here today in the American Dota League. We're going to have typical mistakes who just got a win under their belt in our first game of the day, getting past Smeagol, I should say. Going to be taking on the Brazilian team of Insight Esports. Now, for those who enjoy a little bit of banter with your Dota, guess what? Going to be improving in that department here in game number 2 and maybe throughout the rest of the evening as I'm joined for the first time by a guy many of you may know. His name is Austin Walsh, better known as the Capitalist. He's been doing a lot of work with Toby of late and very excited to have him on. Austin, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing great. Even better now that I'm here casting with you. I'm very excited to be here, so thanks for having me on.
It's my pleasure, man. And yeah, I know you've been wanting to get on for a while, and like I said, I was apologizing to you and Toby. You caught me right in between games. I was actually going to hit up you and maybe Mott and a few other guys. I just didn't have time to hunt out a co-caster for the first game of the day, but you're more than welcome, my friend, and it's me that is really on the receiving end of the pleasure in this arrangement. So anyway, moving ahead, the ADL. Not sure how familiar you are with the teams or anything like that. Hell, I'm still getting acquainted with them. But typical mistakes coming into the ADL was a team many said to keep their eyes on, a standout North American squad. And, again, I'm not real familiar with them other than the ADL. Taking on Insight. Insight currently sitting in the bottom of our standings, desperately needing a win and hoping to get one here today.
Yeah, I do, actually. I do know typical mistakes. They're a very, very good American squad. It's part of the NA Dota boys. So they're all very well known in their own little pub star scenes and their own IXDL scenes as well. Very commonly, you'll see them playing in IXDLI, at least when it was played a lot more. But now they've grouped up. They've been playing a lot lately. They've been scrimming, practicing, getting in these tournaments, and they've been doing well. They've really been shining. They still need a lot of time to really refine. You know, they've switched some players here and there, but the core is still pretty much the same. So I'm very excited to see this game from them. I think, with time, they're going to refine, and they're going to be looking to be one of the next strong American teams.
Yeah, and, I've kind of talked about that a bit. There's them, and there is Minix actually impresses me a lot from Brazil. I think they've got a lot of potential here in the ADL as well. But Arctic, the Peruvian squad, and typical mistakes are the two that I really think have the best opportunity to have a surprise showing and really get a nice run together in their attempt and their bid to crack into the professional scene. But we'll talk more about that later. Right now, taking a look at the bans and the picks. No EO, no Naga, no Bane, courtesy of Insight. And Nature's Prophet, Bat, and Phantom Lance are taken out by typical mistakes. Now, with the new draft style, really, teams are, I've spoken to a number of professional players, and just about everyone agrees. It's, some like it, some don't like it as much as others, but it is certainly shaking things up. The way these drafts feel, the way they play out, is definitely varying from team to team. And Darkseer, this is just an observation. Since the patch went in and this new drafting style came about, Darkseer has really risen back to where he used to be. He is now a first-pick hero a lot of the time just because he is so easy to build around. And given how much more broken apart and how methodical the drafting style happens to be, teams seem to be really taking that approach. Let's get our core heroes that you can build anything around depending on what we see out first. Then we'll follow it up with the more situational picks. And looking at Insight, really Insight picking a team that would have looked a lot more commonplace a month ago, really. Lifestealer, for the most part, has been really neglected by a lot of teams following his recent nerf. Clockwork and the Keeper, certainly good heroes in their own right. Wow, now they're blowing through them. Darkseer, Visage, and Kunkka. Kunkka could talk a bit about it. But the Shadow Demon pickup, looking at Insight, I really like what they're doing so far. They have a team that has a lot of reach and a team that can fight very early. But typical mistakes rounding out their own team fight early. With Kunkka Juggernaut, they're going to have the Darkseer and his utility, as well as Visage. And Visage, a hero that we've seen really become popular just because of how much he can contribute to any lineup he finds himself in.
Oh, absolutely. I love seeing Visage. He's one of my favorite support heroes, and I really love the fact that he's coming into the scene a lot more. He's also a very good hero that goes well with and against Keeper of the Light. All it takes is that big burst of damage, and you see Soul Assumption coming in. But typical mistakes, they're fearing potentially a very disastrous tri-lane coming out from Insight. Lifestealer, Keeper of the Light, Shadow Demon, those are all very, very strong tri-lane heroes, very, very aggressive tri-lane heroes. But with Visage, in my opinion, one of the best tri-lane support heroes, And then Juggernaut, a very hard hero to kill that does a lot of damage very early on. You could even see that healing ward being effective decently early. Typical mistakes, they're rounding out their tri lane to, at the very least, if Insight does try and go for an aggressive tri lane here, they'll be able to fight them. You'll see maybe Insight might be able to pick up a kill and support, but Juggernaut with that spin, Visage with a nice soul assumption, they'll be trading kills easily. So Insight, they might choose to just go a defensive tri lane here. Seeing typical mistakes draft so far, it'd be very, very hard to shut that lane down.
Yeah, and taking, as you mentioned, I mean, Keeper of the Light's really hit and miss in the offensive tri lane for the most part. And a big part of that is he doesn't have the slow. I mean, you can skill Mana Leak if you want, but for the most part, you don't have the slow, a dedicated stun. And this is a situation where Lifestealer's nerf really does begin to show itself. Engaging, you can engage off of a disruption from Shadow Demon if you want, if you're the Lifestealer. But the range on open wounds being reduced as much as it has been, I would not feel comfortable running that as an offensive tri lane, especially as you had mentioned, against a lineup that by all accounts should be able to cope with it no matter what support they plug in. Most likely be seeing Darkseer set up shop in the off lane and in the jungle. Kunkka really becoming a go-to mid hero. He really has benefited quite a bit from the patch, and he's what I really like out of TM's lineup isn't just how strong the lanes seem to be. Strong's probably not the word. I wouldn't say they have threatening lanes quite yet, but they do have very stable lanes. Kunkka is not a hero that's easily run out of lane. He has a built-in harass mechanism with Tidebringer. Juggernaut plus Visage, put any other support with that, they're going to do just fine. But they don't have that hard late-game carry, at least not yet, and I don't really see a place where they would put one. So chances are they're going to want to try to take control of the map early, but that shouldn't be a problem. They have Juggernaut's Healing Ward, Kunkka, a hero who can fight early and fight often, with a Ghost Ship receiving a buff and really low cooldown on that ability, even from level 6. Insight is going to go for the Lone Druid to give them that late-game scaling potential, but the Ogre Magi pick up from typical mistakes, taking a page from Team Liquid's playbook. They're going to have a really nice team to push in with early on, and certainly going to love that bloodlust.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you were saying earlier, neither one of these heroes, neither Kunkka nor Juggernaut, they're not particularly strong hard carries, but given, that little bit of extra gold lead that you can get, especially with a team like this that's going to have a lot of control early on, and then go into the mid game with some really good team fight, the right team fights go their way, they're going to have a significant gold lead, and that mixed with the bloodlust coming out from the Ogre Magi can prove to be a really potent combo that can make those heroes like Juggernaut, like Kunkka, still go into the late game and still be very, very effective.
Taking a look at Insight, it's going to be, whenever I look at this lineup, the issue I have is that the Lifestealer's really going to be all end all for them early on. They're going to have Clockwork in his range, which is going to be great to counter-initiate. But typical mistakes, again, with the Kunkka, and that's often one of the most overlooked factors of Kunkka. It's not just that he can fight very well early on, it's how often he can fight. The cooldown on Ghost Ship early on, 60 seconds, and it goes down with every level. So even from level 6, if you just want to play a high-octane style, which with the Juggernaut you'll have no problem pulling off, they're going to have everything they need to do that. That Lone Druid, as always, and especially with him starting out in the off lane, as we can see, SS is occupying the bottom lane already. With them starting off in the off lane, they're really going to be depending on some very, very nice fights coming out from Plock. He has to have a great start, and this Clockwork getting all this attention mid, he's going to be super important as well. The issue I have with this is the heroes that he's going to be trying, the two primary heroes that he's usually going to want to hook, chances are going to be Juggernaut and the Kunkka. Juggernaut has a mechanism to deal with that, and Kunkka, a tanky hero who doesn't mind being locked in early just because of the strength of Tidebringers. So something else to keep in mind as we see the Spirit Bear trying to do a little creep skipping here. That bear dies, that's a lot of gold in somebody's pocket. The recent patch upping his bounty to 300. And nice shot with the Torrent. The bear is actually going to be already down the half. He's just going to have to run this away. And this could be a very nice start for Cakes. Visage's range showing itself, continuing to melt him down with the Ion Shell. There's Soul Assumption. The bear gives the old end around. 1 or 2 karate chops might be enough. Yep, there you go. No gold, though. So if there's any good thing of that, a good part of that, it's the fact that Druid lost the bear, but did not pay the price for it.
Yeah, and that little play by them, it's really going to hurt this Lone Druid, though. So now he has no bear for 90 seconds. He's not a hero that goes into the jungle without his bear. He is absolutely useless in lane now, so he's not going to be picking up any of experience. He's going to feel way too exposed if he goes out into the lane. I mean, the lane's going to push, but as you see, TM, they're already dealing with this. They're already getting the pull in. They're making sure that this lane isn't going to push out too much, and they're not going to feed in Lone Druid a whole bunch of extra experience. So they successfully have shut him down for the first, 2 minutes. So really well done by Typical Mistakes.
Here in mid, the option to send, and Juggernaut can go mid. You'll see it once in a blue moon. Usually you want to send Kunkka, but I actually really like this decision given how easy, obviously, the solo lane is going to be. Kunkka is one of those heroes, even more so than Juggernaut, can benefit from early items. Jug, really, you don't pick Jug because you want him to carry because of items. I mean, items obviously help. You pick Jug because you want to get a lot of use out of his skill set, the Healing Ward, but more importantly, the Omni Slash and the Blade Fury, and how effective those abilities are at fighting and being aggressive early on. They allow you to put yourself in some risky situations under enemy towers, take fights that way, and just put the enemy on the back foot. So sending him here in mid, guaranteeing that he's going to do even better in levels than he would in a tri-lane, I think really works well for them. And Kunkka, if he gets a good start, able to get up a very quick Shadow Blade, it again just puts even more pressure onto this Lifestealer. Lifestealer by himself is not that great of a carry. He needs someone as a safety valve because he is a single target DPS sort of a hero. And even though they have the clock, again, they have the tools. I just worry that the combat potential of this entire squad is going to show itself between 15 and 25 minutes. And if Insight makes a single mistake, if they end up giving up one particularly lopsided team fight, this game could get out of control for them very, very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's really going to rely on Insight in the mid game to provide some very chaotic fights. I mean, Clockwork being able to jump in, that's certainly a big part of that, being able to cogs one hero and keep the rest back. But the biggest thing about, I feel, Typical Mistakes is their 5-on-5 team fights. If they approach, you got 5 people on one side, 5 people on the other, and you just run at each other, Typical Mistakes is going to have a lot of opportunities for some really good walls and some vacuums, a really easy ghost ship, and the Healing Ward sitting in the back, making sure everyone stays alive. So Insight, they're really going to have to get heavy, I feel, with the movement of Clockwork. I like the fact that they ran him middle because I think he's going to be such an important hero for them. He really is going to have to control the mid game heavily and keep Typical Mistakes from just 5-man pushing in towers and forcing those really easy team fights for them.
At some point, SS is just going to have to make up his mind to cut his losses. He's going to try to creep skip again. We'll see how this is going to work. They have a lot of ways, as we can see already, doing good damage to the bear. They slow him down. And yeah, they've got so many slows. Now here comes Cakes. Their Soul Assumption. If they get this bear, he's going to have to bail. The creeps are being blocked off a bit. And there's another stun. Yeah, they're going to get the bear. He has to go to the jungle. He should. To be honest, I'm a little curious as to why he didn't do that to begin with. Lost his first bear. He's still level 1 at 4 minutes into this game. This is not a lineup that can afford him getting nothing done. He's going to have to leave this lane and duck into the jungle. It's not optimal at all, but it's obvious that Typical Mistakes, again, with the myriad of slows, the myriad of stuns they already have to use on the bear, they're just going to kill that bear over and over, and that time he gave them a nice infusion of gold as well. Pre-runing being done by both teams, and Keeper will grab himself the regen. But we'll take a look at the CS. Kunkka, and at the very least what they have going for them on the side of Insight is they are even out of the tri-lane. The Darkseer and the Juggernaut dominating in their respective roles. Keeper's doing okay, jungling it out. Clockwork coming up a little short against the Jug, but holding his own. But the thing about a Clock, and if you're in Typical Mistake shoes, especially given how much lockdown they do have on their supporting cast, this should be a fairly easy Clock to gank before he hits level 6. At level 6, it gets a little bit more chancy, but Dude, however it's pronounced, is really going to have to watch his back.
Yeah, absolutely. As you see already, Typical Mistakes, they had that big creep wave, and now the rotating Sleesel is already sitting behind that tower, ready to gank the Lone Druid when he comes forward. And look at him, he's going to come forward, and he's just going to get mobbed down instantly if they're able to put position right.
There's the Fire Blast. Brave Chill to follow it up, and that will force a reaction. There's X marks the spot, back into the Torrent, well done. First blood goes to the Ogre Magi. And here comes the Lifestealer. He looks to get a little return kill. Should be able to chase down Sliceal, and will be able to do so. This is trying to help as much as he could. But the first blood does go in their favor. Now, with him being down here, yes, he got a kill there, and that's nice. He's going to take some CS here, but he's still probably going to have to rotate back to top. So they, even though they got a kill, it's still not a great thing for him because he's going to be wasting more time away from CS. But 1-1, 5.5 minutes into the game. If you're just tuning in, this is Typical Mistakes taking on Insight.Avell here in our second game of the day on the American Dota League. I'm Aaron AC Chambers, joined live by Austin Walsh, better known as the Capitalist. So you've been doing a lot of casting with Toby lately. How's that treating you?
Toby's been a really nice guy about, he's brought me in and is really helping me out quite a bit. I've been, casting on and off, sort of as a hobby, for about 2 years now. And I really haven't been able to spend the time to really make it in the scene, and also I just haven't gotten that initial. So he's been really nice helping me out. But top, actually, Clockwork.
Gonna try to make something happen, drops his cogs, bangs his way out. And not the best execution there, but that's a tough lineup to gank out there, though. Surge alone makes that kind of rough, but as we can see, Lifestealer's actually staying down here. That's a little surprising. They're going to rotate down the Shadow Demon as well. He's under cover of smoke. Now, with these two heroes here, level 4 on the Visage, level 6 on the Kunkka, trying to take a fight here would be a bit chancy. And I'll actually be surprised if they do. Yeah, I think our Giraffe is just going to ward and, yeah, he's just going to hang for the moment. Not going to be playing too aggressive. They probably will try to bring this tower down. It is just on denial range, actually. So if they want to force the issue, they definitely can. Here in mid, we've got some movement. Slice'll shows his face as Cakes spots out the Keeper of the Light on the high ground. So perhaps some action coming. Ogre's going to show his face as well. He's level 3, 2 points into Fire Blast. They're going to go ahead and rush up here and just try to be a little threatening. The counter push from the Keeper not going to really allow them to put any concerted pressure on this mid tower, but right now, all the lanes continuing to stay pretty stable. Lone Druid, though, very happy about the current arrangement. Finally getting himself some levels and some gold.
Yeah, absolutely. Meanwhile, though, this is a very dangerous combo. Darkseer throwing the Ion Shell and the Surge on top of Ryu. He can easily pick a hero off here.
Ryu thought about it, thought better of it, backed out. And still no rotation. Shadow Demon does go ahead and deny that tower. The tier 1 bottom, the first to drop. And I'm a little surprised they didn't just try to push bottom, actually. They split their attention here, and like you said, it's the Juggernaut with Surge. I mean, Omni Slash at level 1 just isn't all that potent. Nice Illuminate, gonna catch 3. Slice'll's gotta be careful. He's quite low, Healing Ward helping out. Glyph's gonna be used. In the meantime, Goody continues to suck what he can out of that lane. But 1-1, we remain very, very close at 8 minutes in. We'll take our first look at the gold graph. We can see TM has opened themselves up a lead. First Blood helping with that, as did the death of that Druid's Bear. Only one of those 2 deaths actually counted towards their goal, but nonetheless, quite a help, as they're about 1,500 ahead. The experience much closer at about 500.
Yeah, I like this rotation of Lifestealer to the bottom lane. It's a lane that he can survive in. Meanwhile, Lone Druid is finally able to get some sort of experience. He's just so far behind, losing his Bear twice in a row like that. That's 600 gold giving up to the enemy team, and no levels early on. So even though I know typical mistakes, I think they just needed to wait a little bit more. Get a little bit more experience, and then they can go for these 5-man pushes. Once you have Healing Ward maxed out, and preferably level 11 with that level 2 Omni Slash, I think that's when they're really going to be able to put pressure on these towers. I think that the sitting in the middle was just a little bit too early.
Yep, totally agree. That's kind of what I was saying is, as good as that would seem, against the Keeper of the Light and the Clockwork especially, if it was against some less survivable heroes, it'd be a little bit different, but pushing straight into a Keeper of the Light, and with the Clockwork there ready to drop the cogs the moment you do overcommit and just open the door for a big TP reaction. Just a little chancy. And Ryu's going to go ahead, a nice disruption on himself. Don't know that's going to save him, but certainly bought some time. And that's honestly a bit of a missed opportunity there from Insight. They're going to smoke and head towards mid. If they were quick on that, and this is one of those differences between what I would consider tier 1 and tier 2 teams, not to insult either of the teams. Hold on, there's a hook. Cake's going to land in. Cogs go down, and trying to get the job done. Illuminate does connect, but he will be cleaned up a little too quickly. They came in. They engaged into that fight a little too spread out, but Insight going to continue to try and do some damage. Ryu, Blade Furying away. Shadow Demon cleaned up with another downtown Soul Assumption. Clockwork next on the list, and Open Wound's going to buy him the time he needs. Here comes Ryu re-engaging. Clock trying to survive through it, but he's got 3 heroes banging on him. He is going to rage again, chasing down this Visage. Now decides to turn around, overcommitted just a bit. Ryu has Blade Fury, will spend it, not going to pursue behind the tower. But before that fight broke out, that was the point I was making. They came in from a funny angle that went a little weird for them. When the Shadow Demon disrupted himself, if they were quick and their communication was on par, they should have had 3 circles appear right here. There should have been 3 immediate teleports and force a fight that way. Instead of coming in from a weird angle, the hook from the Clockwork didn't accomplish a whole lot. Nonetheless, TM does maintain their lead 4-2. Tier 1 mid continues standing.
Yeah, you know what's something a little interesting? Clockwork, I really like when I see middle Clockworks. I think he's a hero that can really control the game if you give him those early levels, but he actually goes for a build here. He's actually splitting all of his abilities here, even going 2 levels in Cogs, which a lot of times you'll see, especially if you have early levels on Clockwork, they only leave it at 1, just because Battery Assault and Rocket Flare do so much damage, especially Battery Assault. If you get in those early levels, it does a huge amount of damage if you actually do the math there.
Yep.
So I'm a little bit surprised he didn't actually max that out, or at least the Rocket Flare, but he's aiming for that sort of mid-game domination where once he has level 11, he'll be able to pretty much kill any hero except for, you know, Juggernaut and Kunkka. He can pick off the supports that he wants to. Actually, even Ogre Magi is going to be a really tough hero to kill just because he's so naturally tanky.
12-minute Shadow Blade for Kunkka. That's what we expected. Here come the reactions. Now Ryu's going to surge back out. Looking for a target. Will not pursue uphill. Waits on his team. And see, that's kind of what I would have liked to have seen out of Insight a moment ago. If they reacted to that fight we saw just a few moments ago the way that TM did, they probably would have taken a big team win. But for right now, both just falling back. Flock is doing what he can at bottom, finding his farm. He's got 1,700 gold in the bank on top of a set of phase boots and a set of drums, so very stable build. We'll see if he wants to go straight up armlet next, and if he wants to go with the S and Y approach. And I really haven't been seeing as much of that as I used to, but nonetheless, I mean, again, so much is going to depend on him. He has to have a good game. So far, he's not in bad shape at all, sitting at 1-0-0 in terms of the last hits. He's the most on the board at 91. And typical mistakes, they're going to be looking to hit a timing, and if they're smart, they'll try to do it soon.
Yeah, you know what, honestly, with the bear being shut down so hard, he's going to need so much time to be able to come back into this game, especially since he can't go, I mean, he could, but you won't see an early armlet out of him. You know, I really feel that Lifestealer is really going to have to focus on split pushing. Both him and the bear are going to have to draw attention to the side lanes and try and get away from ganks as much as possible. Middle.
Engagement on our Giraffe. He's down to half health. The immediate Omni Slash as Ryu makes it a double kill. The hook comes in, but it's a day late and $1 short. Drops the cogs, but that's going to do not a whole lot as Visage just doesn't care. Loses a lot of mana, actually bounced into the cogs. Now a nice root. That'll help them out. Gets off a little bit of damage, but he will be cleaned up. Now the engagement back on the block. Infest into the bear. Or was it into the bear? I heard him invest. I just didn't see one into what. But, so where is he? There he is. Yeah, it was into the bear. But, nonetheless, we try to pursue this out. Rocket Flare, just about enough to bring cakes down. But so far, I think Insight's actually doing a much better job than I would have expected in being able to hold these lines. The Clockwork, just to be honest, is a little slow and a little iffy in his decision-making. That hook came in just a bit late. It did end up getting them another kill. But at the same time, they're going to be, like you said, they prioritize the mid, and I agree with you completely. And that a Clockwork, given that kind of priority, is the sort of hero that can just dominate a game. But he has to step into that role. He has to come up big. Otherwise, every minute that goes by, TM is just going to continue to put pressure on and get stronger and stronger.
Yeah, Clockwork's a really good hero to stop these sort of 5-man engagements. Typical mistakes, they want to be able to force team fights, and we've seen Rio, he's tried to go in, but he's always stopped himself because that Cogs is such a disruptive factor, not only for himself, but the rest of his team that's going to try and follow up. So they're really stopping a lot of these team fights, which is allowing Lifestealer and Lone Druid to really come back into the game. Both of them are farming up neutrals right now. And an early Yasha coming out the Lifestealer. You know, normally you like to see Armlet, and that adds a lot into the team fight and the potential early damage, but I like split push here.
And Visage spots out the Druid, did a bit of damage. Going to hear another fight break out just to the south. Ryu there to help clean things up. The Clockwork does end up dropping, but yeah, the S and Y approach, and really, it makes a lot of sense when you look at what he's up against. Again, the ability for... And this is not going to abate. I mean, when you pick a Kunkka, this is why you pick a Kunkka. He can fight this often. Now that he's got his Shadow Blade, he feels comfortable. 700 gold, 1,700 gold in the bank. Ghost Ship on a low cooldown. He actually is going to TP away here. That's a little surprising. Instead, continuing to prioritize his farm. Perhaps just really wanting a BKB before he starts to sell out on these fights. But, you know, given his team's in good shape, really understand it. But back to the LS. I mean, when you look at the team he's up against, in between rages, he's going to be extremely vulnerable. And given how much is being placed on his shoulders to carry the water for damage and for team fights. He just has to have that mobility. He has to make sure that as he rages in, engages, and then looks to withdraw before rage wears off, he's going to have the mobility to get out and get out safely. Because if he dies in these fights whenever he does show up to 5-man, basically all the damage that Insight has goes with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Now that Typical Mistakes has taken away the last of the Tier 1 towers, they can try and control the map a little bit more, maybe group up, maybe do a smoke gank here or there, but just try and put Insight on the back foot, make sure that they don't feel safe, or as safe, when they go to farm up neutrals and that sort of thing, because I feel like they're giving up a lot of extra gold to Insight. The Bear's really coming back when it comes to farm. He's already got another 1,000 gold with the phase boots on the Bear. He's still a little bit of ways until he can actually participate well in team fights. Usually you want at least that one big item on the Bear, but given much more time, you're going to see that item picked up, and he's going to be able to participate in those team fights, where Typical Mistakes, you want to be able to exploit those sort of timings. You want to be able to force those team fights before those items are picked up. And they're exactly what they're doing. They're smoking up, and they're trying to put some pressure.
They should know this is coming. They walked right over top of the sentry ward. And it looks like Clock's still kind of hanging out. Maybe they saw it and they're not sure. And, yeah, Ryu just runs up and auto-attacks, just says hello, gives him a pat on the back. And I'm really surprised. That was an excellent Omni-Slash opportunity. I guess he honestly just thought it was an illusion or something. That had to have been why, because there was nothing else around. An Omni-Slash would have been perfect. But 7-3, they are going to go ahead and begin to batter down the walls here in mid. Ryu will spot him out again and just going to run right up. Yeah, I mean, Clock is... Yeah, that's the weirdest death I've seen in Pro... That's the weirdest 2 deaths I've seen in Pro Dota in a long time. He just ran up, said hello, and they did not react quick enough at all. We're going to see SS cleaned up. This is... What just happened? Ryu was surged, but he just ran up and killed their whole team, and they just kind of didn't seem to care.
Yeah, that's really the power of putting Ion Shell in a Juggernaut. It adds in all that extra damage over time, and then on top of that, you give him Bloodlust from the Ogre Magi, and it gives him the attack speed. You need a certain amount of attack speed to be able to auto-attack in between Omni-Slashes, and with that early Bloodlust, it allows him to do that without picking up, too many attack speed items. So it's really well done strategy by Typical Mistakes, and they're executing it, pretty well. They're just shutting down Insight as much as possible, going to lock them inside of their base. They're going to take the last of the tier 2s, the bottom tier 2 first, and rotate up to top soon. And once they do that, then they'll just farm up a little bit more, wait till they have those big items to break the base.
I agree with you, but what we just saw in mid there was not a nice play out of Typical Mistakes. It was just bizarre out of Insight, and I'm not one to usually say that. It's whenever you just stand around and let a Juggernaut slowly pick your team apart, you kind of got to draw attention to it. Nonetheless, TM way ahead, coming up on 7,500 gold. Actually, make that 10,000 gold. They are into that 5-digit territory. And 7,500 experience, and this is beginning to look like it may already be a bit out of hand. And Clock, I'm going to guess they're playing on high ping. That has to be it. That's 2 or 3 times he's done that. He's just kind of not really playing good Dota. And I'm not hating on the player, because I've seen Insight play. They usually play much better than this. And decent disruption buys a little bit of time, but not going to do anything but delay the inevitable as he drops once again. And Clock going to try to re-engage as best he can. A little bit of damage done with the Illuminate. But both of these teams...
under attack.
Really, I mean, it's getting to that point where for Insight, and this was the concern coming in, I expressed it during the draft, if they got behind, how do you play from behind when you only have one source of physical damage? We are going to go on the Ogre Magi, but even, look how much damage he's already taking even with Rage active. There's an Omni-Slash, going to bounce one more time, and Visage secures the kill with it. Soul Assumption, and the Bear almost drops as well. 20 minutes in, and this is beginning to look like we might see a GG soon.
Yeah, absolutely. They're just, like you said, there isn't many ways for Insight to be able to come back into this game. It would take a serious mistake from TM. They would have to make a serious blunder trying to crack open the base, but that's always the hardest trick, is cracking open the base. So they're probably going to farm up a little bit more, take that Roshan. Once they have that Aegis advantage, all they need is one little pick off, and they'll be able to just take an easy Rax.
Battle Fury on the way for Kunkka, and an Aegis, I would imagine, like going to wind up in his or Juggernaut's inventory. Looks like it will. They are going to try to challenge it, or at least make them think twice about it. They do manage to bring it down. Kunkka does get the Aegis. And with the Battle Fury done, And his Shadow Blade, he is going to be hitting very hard in a very, very wide AoE. And, I mean, when you look at the pure net worth, I mean, it tells a story. 4 of the top 5 in net worth all belong to Typical Mistakes. Only the Lifestealer anywhere near where he needs to be. At this point, the Druid is being nearly tripled up in terms of net worth by the Kunkka. You know, Insight is, and again, I'm not trying to pass judgment. I've seen Insight. They've had some good games. Today, they're just have felt off their game. I didn't mind their draft so much just because it's a sensible draft. The way they played it had to be insanely specific. This smoke will be spotted as they ran right past the ward in the sentry. But their execution just has been a bit lacking, and Archerath almost ended up dead. They were going to have a stun out on. I'm not sure if they weren't paying attention. They had to have seen this coming. They ran right past the ward and past the sentry. Now they're going to be chased back as they try to pick off the clockwork. He makes it to the high ground, but he'll be cleaned up in the shadow of his own tier 3. 16-3. And the last remaining outer tier tower being assaulted by Goody at top as well, while the tier 3 in mid likely to drop. And, I mean, Lifestealer doing what he can. Takes down the first or second tower of the game. But they're going to lose at least 2 and probably a set of racks.
Yeah, that play was really on the supports there. Because of smoke, it doesn't show up on the minimap. You really have to have your supports. They knew it was coming. They had the counter wards in place. So they knew that eventually that smoke gank was going to be coming. That's just up to the supports to be looking at those key locations for those smoke ganks. But now Desolator picked up on Juggernaut, and this is just not going to stop. With the healing ward, they just heal up, go back in.
Yep. There's a nice Omni Slash pluck. Cleaned up. Ryu's had an excellent game. Sitting at 6-0-7, and the GGs, I'm sure, will be out now. As they bring down the only real sources of damage, yep, there it is. GG, well played, go G2. We will have 2 back-to-back games of these teams. Typical Mistakes and Insight, but again, I'm not trying to apologize for them, but Insight plays much better than this. This was, if this is your first time seeing them, I don't want people writing them off as just a terrible team, because they're not. I've watched them play a couple of times here in the D2L. And they are struggling a bit. I mean, make no mistake, they are still near the bottom of the standings. But that was just a weird game. And I don't know if it was server issue, and I'm so not the guy to blame servers. But that time around, just some really weird things happened. And yeah, the end result stays the same, though. 22 minutes, 48 seconds, the official game time. 19-3, the final kill score. And Typical Mistakes showing why they are one of the most watched after teams in terms of development and up and comers here in North America. Any thoughts on that?
No, absolutely, I agree. I mean, Insight, I've seen them play before, and I agree with everything you said. They really have looked better. They still need a lot of practice, and they're definitely the underdog here, but they have played better. I think they were just going into this draft. It's always hard going up against Typical Mistakes because their drafting is always really interesting. They try out new heroes. They try out different drafts because they know at their level they can do that and still come out. They can play around a little bit and experiment with the draft, especially with the new patch. You can play around with the draft and still have a really strong team fight just as long as you execute it right. And Typical Mistakes, they always have that communication. They always execute well. So still, really, really well done by Typical Mistakes, and hopefully Insight will prove to be a stronger opponent in Game 2.
These games are the second game, as my good friend, my new casting buddy Austin just pointed out. These 2 teams back in action for game number 3 of the day, game number 2. Between the 2, once again, want to thank you for being a part of the ADL broadcast here today. Make sure you hit follow here on twitch.tv/American Dota League. You can find me on Twitter as well. I'm at AC, at AYESEE. And Austin, my friend, where can they find more about you?
Over at Dota Capitalist on Twitter. That's I'm not really a big Twitter guy, but I realized I had to create one, and I'm actually really enjoying myself now. So over there on Twitter, and then also I've got a Twitch channel, Dota Capitalist as well. So
there you go. Our second game between Typical Mistakes and Insight.Avell coming up next with me on the mic, joined by the Capitalist. Stick with us, guys. We'll be right back.